How we going, guys? So not done a video for a while, so I thought I'd bring them back in, and I want to discuss the fact that restaurants will now be providing calorie values for all their menus, and this sort of the pros and cons of this. And I want to try and present a more balanced discussion as opposed to one or the other, and kind of cast aside my thoughts and maybe just look at things from both sides. So firstly, what does this mean? Because ultimately a calorie value is simply just a piece of information of the energy content of a particular meal. Now, that in isolation doesn't really mean too much to many people. There needs to be a layer of education around nutrition, about nutrient density, the fact that you don't have to stick at one calorie intake forever. You can take it up, you can take it down, it's not a problem. You do not need to be in a deficit. You can switch between things, portion sizes, protein content. That there needs to be a much greater education and understanding alongside the calorie number. And this is maybe where things might fall down, is that people may base their meal choices purely on the lowest available calorie number, and that in itself could potentially be damaging. It may lead to poor relationships with food, over demonization of higher calorie meals, and again, it comes down to people are going to require more information to be able to interpret the numbers they are seeing. The simple argument of aesthetics equals health is oversimplified and oftentimes potentially not true. Very, very, very low levels of body fat that you see on sort of bodybuilders, social media influencers, do not always equate to health, and in fact can be masking poor relationships with food, eating disorders and the like. On the other side of the scale also, and this is where I do think social media isn't particularly helpful, as we're only ever sort of subjected to that extreme or that extreme because engagement and the algorithm. Moderate views don't really do too well because they don't sort of invoke a reaction either way, and they don't get people, I want to say discussing, but more often not shouting at each other and arguing. And social media portrays a lot of the extreme, and although absolutely being lean does not necessarily mean you are healthy, where the other side of the argument and the anti-diet movement potentially is also contributing to this as well, is that yes, being very, very lean doesn't equal health. However, there is a lot of statistical evidence and research that says a very, very high body fat percentage is very detrimental to health. It does make you more likely to develop certain organ diseases, mobility issues, early death, and sort of all-cause mortality. That you can't really get around the fact of that. Like, either end of the scale, extremely lean and extremely obese, if you like, is it is not good for health either way. And I can't help but think that this is where the fitness industry has probably not served people very well. There isn't, well, actually no, there is good information. However, the most prominent information tends to be at either extreme, and it isn't serving people well. It isn't helping people promote health. We probably need to start looking somewhere in the middle, whereby nutritional education is there for people to understand in much greater detail about calorie intake, but also about nutrient density, protein intake, how to cycle calories, removing demonization away from foods. And so this has been a bit of a ramble. I do apologize, but I would love to hear your sort of take on the sort of the subject and what your thoughts are. Happy to discuss with anyone. It doesn't need to become a shouting match, because no one ever listens or learns in those situations, but just for a place to have good open discussions, see different viewpoints, and probably find that somewhere in the middle of everyone's viewpoints is probably a good average. So love to know your thoughts. Apologies, it's been a bit of a long ramble. I hope you found it interesting. If you have any questions, fire them in the comments, message me below. I would love to sort of help and give my thoughts on the matter. So I will see you in the next video.